Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Entheos entitled Time Will Take Us All. This is the third studio album from this American progressive and technical death metal crew formed by Naveen Koperweiss and Evan Brewer back in 2015, both of whom you may remember from brief stints with other more reputable tech death and prog death crews like Animosity and The Faceless. Naveen Koperweiss has also worked closely with Whitechapel, Machine Head, Animals as Leaders, and Evan Brewer has also worked closely with Fallujah as of late. And rounding out the lineup on lead vocals, we have Cheney Crab, whose resume isn't quite as long or detailed as Naveen and Evan, but that's okay. She's mega hella talented, and that's really all that matters in context of this review. As talented as all of these people are, and as consistently solid as their output has been, I have to concede that they've really struggled to stand out. And a lot of this has to do with the very simple fact that tech death is an extremely crowded arena, more so than any other sub-genre of heavy metal. There are just so many bands that look and sound and act the fucking same, and as I've said before, tech death is kind of just a constant pissing contest with no clear winner. Well, arguably Archspire with their past studio album, but you get the point. And it appears as though Entheos might actually agree with me because they've taken some steps to appear a bit more unique and different from the rest of tech death. For one, they've reduced the lineup to Cheney Crab and Naveen Koperweiss. Officially speaking, at least. Evan Brewer does still contribute some bass work to the album, but the bulk of the creative output here is being handled by Naveen and Cheney. I think this has allowed for a little bit more freedom, as Entheos no longer have to bounce ideas off of like 4 or 5 other people. They can just kind of walk in and do what they want. They can talk about what they want. They can play the riffs and the beats that they want to play. Lyrically, too, this album is a lot more personal, a lot more revealing and introspective and urgent than your standard tech death fare, with a lot of inspiration and influence being pulled from an accident that Cheney had back in August of 2021. An accident which left her semi-paralyzed, unable to do a lot for herself, with over 100 stitches in her face alone, questioning if she'd be able to even do her job beyond this point, if she'd be able to, continue singing in a metal band. The album is very much an examination and an exploration of these really dark emotions, but it's also very much about getting better, becoming better, rising from the ashes. As Cheney says here in a press release, the album took form as a journey through the depths of depression into gratitude, but ultimately as an examination of our time and how precious it is. The time that we spend working towards goals when we don't know the true outcome of them or if they'll be important to us in the future. The time that we spend battling inner demons and being consumed by negative thoughts or depression and by our own voices. The time that we spend with the people that we love. The time that we spend focused on things that absolutely do not matter. The time that slips away as we feel life passing us by. And the time that we have left in this life. And all of this combined makes for not just a really good album, but quite frankly, the first truly unique thing I feel I've heard from Entheos. Like, even in moments where this album looks and sounds like your standard tech death, it never quite feels like it. The album's title track and closing number, Time Will Take Us All, is a really good example of everything I'm talking about. What eventually starts off as a more serene kind of finale to the record, with some very delicately plucked acoustic guitars and some very peaceful, if perhaps foreboding, clean vocals, eventually not blossoms but rather explodes into a flurry of pounding, bruising, agonizing death metal brutality. You can genuinely hear the mental despair here as guitars just repetitively pound down, as bass guitar just completely flies off the fucking rail like a runaway train, and as Cheney shrieks and screams and roars into the microphone. There's also I Am the Void, which is very slow, very dark, very moody. It plays around with a lot of eerier kind of vocal textures and harmonies and patterns, with these very creepy, monotonous, soft-spoken cleans and these more, combined with these softer, more melancholic chords and progressions and a few spirited solos. It weirdly has a vibe akin to that of like some 90s goth or alternative music. Like, it's still very much a progressive death metal song, but maybe with just the faintest whiff, the most subtle addition of like Paradise Lost or Catatonia. Oblivion follows a pretty similar blueprint with some evocative guitar work and some more slow-moving riffs and passages and some more weird cleans, but I would say overall it plays more so to the strengths of progressive death metal, almost sounding like a mishmash of Focus-era Cynic and like the Portal Tapes-era Cynic. I especially like the spacey, otherworldly guitar work near the very end, which transitions quite nicely into some genuinely horrifying kind of like vocal nonsense. Like, it sounds like an alien trying to communicate with me from a far-off realm, from another corner of the universe. And even as we get to tracks that aren't as expansive, that could in theory be described as standard tech death, it's done so goddamn well that I'm just not bothered. Like, there's a really good variety of riffs and beats and vocal prowess in numbers like Absolute Zero and In Purgatory and The Sinking Sun and The Interior Wilderness. It's fun, it's cool, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat with a bag of popcorn like I'm watching an action movie, excited to see what happens next. And all the while, we're still going into some pretty dark territory. In Purgatory, for instance, deals with the pain and misery that Chaney felt in the aftermath of her aforementioned accident, and not really knowing what was going to come next, if she would even get better or not. The closest thing I have to a legitimate issue with this record would probably be the production. This thing is just a little too clean, a little bit too sterile. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. It's nice to actually be able to hear everything, all the guitar stuff, all the bass stuff, all the percussion, all the vocal stuff, and all the weird little atmospheric bits and pieces and morsels and spices and so on and so forth. But something with just a little bit more beef, something with just a little bit more muscle, I think would have really helped sell some of the darkest and some of the most emotive elements of this record. I'm feeling a very solid 4 out of 5 on this, maybe leaning towards a 3.5 out of 5, but a 4 out of 5 nonetheless. Probably the band's best album to date, in my opinion at least. Anyone looking for something just a little bit different from the realms of tech death and progressive metal should be pretty excited with this. For the first time, I'm actually kind of pumped to see where Entheos goes in the future, what roads they travel down, what new territories and ideas and concepts and even genres they explore. Once again, 4 out of 5, great record. Definitely check this bad boy out. I'm honestly a little shocked. I knew it would be good. I didn't think it would be this good. Please check it out. You'll love it. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.